welcome to Project Recovery, a podcast about addiction. More importantly, it's about recovery, and it's brought to you by our friends at KnowYourScript.org. Go check them out. Without them, we wouldn't be able to do this weekly podcast, to which I owe a lot of my recovery to, Dr. Matt.
You sure do. It's given you a great outlet to have a focus every week on recovery, your recovery, other people's recovery. I think it's been a smart plan on your part.
Now, so have you ever noticed that sometimes in life, themes seem to be present?
Definitely.
You know, sometimes it's trials, sometimes it's relaxation, sometimes it's just there's always seems to be themes that go along in my life. And I really love it when all of a sudden I go, somebody's trying to tell me something.
Right.
So last week we had a guest on who sat down in that chair. Her name was Amy.
I remember.
And she said one of her projects while she was going to school to get her master's was her why. And so she had to write a page on what her why is.
Yeah, I like that.
And it was kind of why she was doing the program, or why, you know.
Meaning, purpose, all that.
And I thought, hey, that's pretty interesting, you know, and I've never really thought about what my why is. Mm-hmm. And then yesterday I was at a luncheon for the Women's Council of Realtors.
Of course you were.
Because it's part of my job.
Yeah, I'm sure that's what it is.
And they had a speaker.
Uh-huh.
And he was the 8-continent man.
8-continent man?
Yeah.
Not incontinent man.
No, 8-continent man.
All right.
And this man had survived cancer.
Uh-huh.
And decided he was going to run a marathon in every continent.
Oh, yeah, okay.
And he came and spoke.
Cool.
And, it was great. He had some good catchphrases.
So hold on. We got two guys at the women's conference.
Oh, my brother was there, too.
And your brother. Okay.
Yeah.
This is making less sense as we go, but go ahead.
But it's my life, and it makes sense.
Yeah.
And so he has some pretty cool catchphrases.
So he ran a marathon on all 8 continents.
Yeah.
Is that right?
Yeah.
Wow, that's pretty impressive.
And his catchphrases were something like this: I'm too blessed to be stressed.
Yeah, I've heard that one, yeah.
And I like that one. He goes, my ego is not my amigo.
I don't know if that's Freud approved, but all right.
But he had this laugh that was just infectious.
Cool.
And I'm too grateful to be hateful. Those are his 3.
That's a good one.
I like that.
Yeah.
But then he started talking about his why.
Oh, did he use that same terminology?
Yes, yeah,
all
he
right.
goes, so I had to figure out what my why was. Mm-hmm. And he goes, you're not going to believe this, but my why is you. And he was pointing to everybody in the audience, and everybody's like, wow. And what he meant by it was that he was on this earth to do service to others. And he was kind of a motivational speaker, and he goes, you know, I'm here for you. He goes, I'm going to do this speech, and I hope you just walk away with one thing that's going to change your life. Now, it's crazy to think that just one thing can change your life. Mm-hmm. One insignificant thing, one chance meeting, if you believe in chance or if you believe in destiny or whatever, one meeting can change your life, but it really can.
Sure.
And so it got me to thinking about what my why is. Like I could tell you 20 years ago, my why was I wanted to be on TV. I wanted to do this, and it was all kind of selfish. And it was things that I thought that I wanted. And then it was all taken away from me, and I had to figure out what my why really is. Because I had put so much stock into the TV, the radio, the persona, and all that stuff, I thought that was my why.
So you felt like your why, you said selfish, was kind of maybe about more superficial things?
100%. 100%. Did I enjoy it? Did I do good things while I was doing that? Yes. But it was all to feed my ego. And
your ego was your amigo.
Yes, it was. I love that. And it was. And so when all that was taken away and it was no longer cool to be a Casey Scott fan, and I had to do
It wasn't very cool to be Casey Scott for a minute there.
No, trust me, it sucked.
Yeah.
But I had to figure out what my why is.
Right on.
And who I am and what I like, because I was so driven and so focused on these things that I thought I needed to make my life full.
Mm-hmm.
That they were all taken away.
Yeah, you could say that way.
I mean, not my family, but the job.
Well, let's be honest. Your family changed, if you want to think of it that way.
Yeah.
You're still good friends with your ex-wife, and you have great relationship with your kids. But part of your drinking influenced was one of the causes of the divorce. Wouldn't you agree?
One of the main causes of my divorce.
Right.
Yeah. And my ego and my attitude and a lot of things. And so when I was stripped away with that, I mean, I had to figure out who I was and what I wanted my life to look like. And so that's why I think self-reflection is so important, because I've finally sat down and figured out, who do I want to be? What do I want to be? And I want to be a good person. I want to be a good provider, and I want to be a service to others. That's why when we started this podcast is so important to me, because it is a way to give back. And my why now is giving back. I get more from giving than taking any. It's crazy how that works.
Yeah, service is a wonderful thing. It often does more for us than it does for other people, and so it's a win-win for sure. But it's funny, when in our young life, when we're young adults, naturally and understandably, we have to survive. So we're focused on well, what am I going to do to make money? What am I going to do, to be a professional? What am I going to do if I have a family to take care of? And so it's easy to get caught up in that ego. It's easy to get, especially if you have some success along the early stages, then you kind of start thinking, well, I'm pretty special. I'm pretty important. And I think anybody in any field of work, you're susceptible to that.
Right.
And so you kind of maybe forget some of those lessons that most of us learned in childhood about service and giving back.
Better to give than receive.
Yeah.
And you're like, I don't know. Have you ever received something really cool?
Receiving's pretty good, yeah. And you forget about gratitude, and it's easy to get caught up in that. And sometimes, unfortunately, certain things happen that are tragic, but the positive side can be we kind of get humbled. And we have to reevaluate things. And it sounds like that's what you're talking about, that you realized service and gratitude really are your why, more than the kind of self-promotion stuff.
And that's the goal, and that's where I'm aiming to move my life to. But the thing that I wanted to talk to you a little bit about is that, we talk about the 3 pillars or the 4 pillars or whatever your recovery is.
Right.
And a lot of it's mental, physical, and spiritual.
Right.
In spiritual, I guess you could put service in spiritual, but, anytime we get somebody on the podcast, and the reason they sit down, like Becky's about to, and tell her story, they get a little nervous. But they always say, and it sounds cliche, but almost everybody who comes on this podcast says it either out loud or in their mind, goes, if this will help just one person, it'll be worth it.
Yeah.
And service is such an integral part of recovery that I don't think sometimes we give it enough credit or its due.
Well, I will tell you, one of the things I've learned from doing this show with you is I had no idea how many people in our community who are doing amazing things for others and really setting the standard for how to serve each other are people in recovery. I just didn't really realize that. There's so many people in all walks of life and serving others in a lot of different capacities who are people in recovery, and part of that service provides them the healthy, positive energy to stay sober and do good for others. So I mean, it's impressive what people do with their lives once they find recovery.
Remember when the pandemic was in full swing and there was a kind of movement that said all heroes don't wear capes?
Right.
And it was kind of highlighting the frontline responders and all those that go above and beyond.
Definitely.
Okay? But on this podcast, all heroes don't wear capes. Some of them have multiple felonies, sleeve tattooed arms, but they are heroes.
They are.
That have been through the fire and walked out the other side and says, listen, I can show you how to do this. I can tell you what I've seen, and I can help you navigate that. And that's what
mentoring other people, and that's very valuable.
And so that's why I'm so excited for our guest today.
Yeah.
Her name is Becky Tuttle.
Right.
She's a registered nurse. She's an alcoholic. She's in recovery. And we're going to find out about her story because it really is inspiring. Because as we were riding up in the elevator, hi, Becky, how are you?
Good, how are you?
She said to me, she goes, I'm nervous. I go, don't be nervous. You're just talking to 2 friends.
Yep.
She goes, but my story is not salacious. It's not Jerry Springer-esque. You know what I mean? It's a pretty basic story. And I said, but I think that's what the majority of people out there are dealing with. A lot of times we do get people on here that have had beta fish fights in their garage or homeless people sleeping in their parents' basement. You know what I mean?
Right.
And that was just one guest.
That was just one person, yeah.
But we've had some crazy stuff.
Right. We get those stories sometimes that are just pretty, they're outliers.
Yeah.
But the majority of people, they're just like you and I or anybody else, and they came to addiction in their way, and we talk about how they got out of it and what they're doing. And I think personally, those are those are the inspiring stories, because we can relate to that better.
So why was your reason for wanting to do this podcast, Becky?
Because I think that there's a lot of people that can be reached, even as you mentioned, just that one person. There's that one person, whether they're a medical professional. I just see so many normal people, and if I can share my story and it influences somebody, and part of being an addict is being alone, and just want people to know that they're not alone and that they can recover and enjoy a beautiful life.
I totally agree with that. In fact, I think the key word I think of is hope versus hopelessness. We're either hopeful or hopeless. And when you feel alone, and when you feel like, there's no way to get out of being stuck in what you're stuck with, it feels hopeless. And, I have people come in my office, sit on the couch, talk to me about feeling hopeless, I guess, every day. And sometimes the hopefulness comes in unexpected places, and sometimes it's a brief interaction with somebody, sometimes it's a longer thing, sometimes it's a stranger, sometimes it's someone you know well, but it's always a personal connection. And so by you sharing your story, you're offering a personal connection to anybody who's willing to listen, and therefore they have the opportunity to grab some hope. And so I'm excited to hear your story today.
I heard this person the other day talking on the radio, and they were talking about hope and how powerful hope is.
And by the way, hope is a studied subject. We use hope as a regular term, but if anybody's a nerd out there and wants to read stuff, you can look up C.R. Snyder with an S and look at his research on hope. Hope is a powerful psychological concept. Go ahead.
The only way hope is not beneficial to an addict in recovery is that you hope this magically goes away.
Yeah.
You know what
magical
I mean?
Thinking. Yeah.
And sometimes we do that. There was a lot of years.
I hope for magic every day.
Yeah. I battled my addiction for so many years and tried to outthink it, outmaneuver it, and all this stuff. And I'll be honest with you, I hope it would just go away.
Maybe tomorrow I'll wake up, I won't have it.
But that will not work.
Right.
And I don't want to make anyone mad, but this is a disease that you can't hope and
you can't
pray
wish
away.
it away.
You can't.
Yeah.
It doesn't. You have to do the work, and you have to do it for yourself.
But once hope becomes part of your process, then work becomes exciting. You see the process, you see the progress. It feels good. Hope is a cool concept because it builds on itself.
Yes.
So success leads to more success. Hope leads to more hope.
Like a snowball.
Yeah, there's a positive snowball effect. Absolutely.
And I love it. And so I can't wait to hear Becky's story. So where does the story of young Becky begin?
So I grew up in Ogden, Utah.
Yeah. I say that because I grew up in Ogden, Utah.
Well, let's look at your hat.
Oh, yeah, it says Ogden Made.
Yeah.
Before Ogden Made was a thing, we used to go, you're from Ogden? Yeah, the biggity O. O-Town.
O-Town, right.
I had a great childhood. I'm the youngest of 6 kids, the significant youngest. My older brothers are quite a bit older than me, and then I have an older sister.
You're kind of the trailer kid.
Yeah, I was like the tail end, accident child, you would call it.
Oops, baby.
Oops, yeah. I think my mom had me when she was in her early, like 40 at least. So, but my parents were great. They supported me. They loved me. I had a really normal childhood. My dad was a coach for all of our girls' events. My mom was a stay-at-home mom and just very on it and made dinner. Just your typical like 1970s wife. And I had great parents. I had a great family. I love my family.
So no real trauma to speak of? No,
not at all. When I got into my teenage years, my parents, they were older. My dad was retired. They traveled a lot. So I was home a lot on my own and could make good decisions, kept the house clean, like went to school, didn't slough. I was
didn't throw big parties like Casey would have.
Parties.
And did.
I think I had like one, but it was just like small, like hiding in the little closet. Like,
yeah. No lights on in the front so neighbors could know. Yeah. Everybody snuck in the back door, parked 3 houses down.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. It sounds like you've done this before. Yeah.
Like I've had some good friends. But when I was about 16, like just something clicked and I like felt a lot of pressure and I didn't want to feel that anymore. And at that time, I just I still did well in school, but I didn't want to go. I didn't feel like I maybe fit in all the way. There was friends that like my close childhood friends, they kind of were doing we were separating.
Now you use the word pressure, and it's a very good word for it. But what I'm hearing is anxiety.
There's a strong family history of anxiety. I'll tell you that right now. but yeah,
back then in the mid '80s, anxiety wasn't often talked about.
No, in fact, I think it still isn't talked about enough in families. But yeah, did you feel like your family talked about those things? Or
no, everything was fine. We didn't talk about a lot of problems.
Usually parents did stuff like, well, they're getting good grades. And
yes, everything's okay.
She does her chores, and she's not causing me any trouble, so she must be fine.
Hasn't pierced her belly button yet.
Yeah, I don't feel like I had like really deep conversations with my mom. She was my mom, but it wasn't like one of those really close knit relationships where I could tell her all my problems with boyfriends and friends. It was just. There wasn't problems, so why talk about it? Well, there was problems, but we didn't talk about it, I should say.
Right. You want to talk about just the things that were going well.
Yeah.
But you're around 15, 16, and you're having this pressure, and you don't want to go to school, but you're still just maintaining and going through everyday life.
Yeah, I was checking the boxes, I was doing fine, but that's when I took my first drink, and it was a horror story. We're going to a haunted house, and I think that they made some jungle juice. I had never drank before, and I didn't know. And hard alcohol hits you harder than like if you were sipping on a beer or whatever. And it knocked my socks off. I didn't go home that night. I think I ran into a tree. It was a disaster. And so,
but it was a disaster. But did you have a good time?
No.
Because sometimes we'll hear that because most people, the average person will go, it was a disaster, I'm not doing that again. Well, but you wouldn't be here if you didn't do it again.
Yes.
How about this? Was it a relief to some of your anxiety, or did it make it worse?
Yeah, it probably was just like a way to like say, like, I don't have to be perfect. I can go screw up. And the pressure was released a little bit that I didn't have this like path to walk where I couldn't step off of it.
Sounds like you felt like a lot of shoulds, like you should do certain things at that point. Like you're supposed to be a certain way, a lot of responsibilities. Is that kind of the pressure part of that?
Were you an active member in the church?
Yeah. So in the 80s, the church was
Which church would that be?
LDS
The Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints.
All right, just so the listeners know.
Yeah. And in the 80s, like growing up, it was a lot different. I find the church like a lot more understanding and comforting versus in the 80s, it was like, if you fall off this path, then you're a sinner.
Pretty rigid, right?
It was very rigid, yeah. And like I don't fault the church, like the LDS church or anything for the choices that I made at that time, but it was just something...
When
went
you want to talk
wrong.
about pressure, that's a lot of pressure to put on a young mind.
Well, the truth is we have biological predispositions towards physical traits as well as psychological traits. And so things like depression and anxiety, if, like you said, they run in the family, then you have a predisposition to that. And so a kid who has a predisposition to anxiety doesn't need a lot of extra pressure about rigid rules because they already are putting that on themselves. And so for some kids that don't have that predisposition, they can grow up in an environment with lots of rigid rules and be like, yeah, whatever, I didn't even really notice. and Casey. And then other people who kind of grow up with that, it's like a hyper conscientiousness. And they're like, oh my goodness, I've really got to follow all the rules. And you're putting extra pressure on yourself plus the pressure from the outside. And we don't realize that those kids are really carrying around a lot of stress and pressure from their predisposed anxiety plus the rigid rules and expectations of either church or home life or whatever. And it can be tremendous amounts of stress that we don't always see on the outside. It's often just on the inside.
Yeah.
So the day after the disastrous first partying, how did you feel?
I felt terrible. I felt bad. I'm like, I'm never going to do this again.
Probably
but
guilt.
You're like, well, not everybody has a terrible experience. Like, I got to try it again. Like people appear to be having a lot of fun when they drink and they party. And, so I went to a party and I remember taking my first sip of beer and it was disgusting. I had to have a Jolly Rancher in my mouth just to even tolerate it. But I got it down, because this is what I wanted to do.
I'm not a quitter.
Yeah.
I'm not a quitter. Yeah, I'm gonna do this. I'm gonna do it right. So of course I did it right because
There you go.
what we
That's
do.
the personality.
And then, another disaster happens, just a humiliation. When I drink, I do it well, and it's embarrassing, and I do stupid stuff, and I don't stop because I got to just keep going because that's what we're supposed to do is just and have fun. But I didn't find that sometimes I'd have fun. It wasn't always like a terrible experience, but when there was a terrible experience, I remembered it.
You to this day still remember those humiliating things.
Yeah, and then at some point, alcohol became more of it took away that. I didn't have to remember that, and it took away the fear and the anxiety and the pain. So,
did you start to gain sort of a reputation, because you did kind of outlandish things when you were drinking? Or?
I would have called you Two Beer Becky.
I think I tried to avoid that reputation of the partier or the slut or whatever, So I went to college. So I left.
Okay.
I went to college in my senior year.
Oh, you left early from high school.
Yeah, so that.
But your grades were good enough that was an option.
Yeah. So I kind of exited out of the high school life and I went to college. Had boyfriend breakups, so on and so forth. Just a normal, ritual of growing up.
Sure.
So I went to college and everything was going fine in college.
Did you party in college?
Yeah, a little bit. I wasn't in sororities or anything because I went to Weber State. So I literally was going to the Harrison High, as you call it.
Yeah.
I lived at home still. My parents were on a mission. They left to go on a mission when I was 18 years old. They went on a mission to India.
And that's for the LDS Church.
Yeah.
For the listeners who don't know, everybody knows the young missionaries, but oftentimes when couples get older, they'll go out and serve and do missionary work. So they were in India?
They were in India.
Wow, that's a long ways away.
Yeah, and at 18, I was pretty much on my own. My parents,
so you were living at home, but it was your own house.
It was
at
my
that
own
point.
house, yeah. So I can control. My brother lived there, and he was trying to be my supervisor, but
I'm sure that went well. Huh?
Yeah.
You're in college. Your parents are gone.
Yeah. Yeah, I moved out briefly.
So did you know what you wanted to do in college?
No, I got a bachelor's degree in lifestyle management, which is essentially health, recreation, nutrition, and fitness. Because I had it all together and I wanted to teach people how to be healthy, So after I got my bachelor's degree, I went and worked at a residential treatment center out in Syracuse.
For substance, for alcohol?
For youth, yeah.
Yeah.
So all behavior problems for behavior disorder
yeah.
kids.
Yeah, there was a lot of kids from California that came. They were on some California program. There was a lot of wealthy children. Excuse me.
Which happens a lot in Utah because different states legislate residential treatment differently. And in the state of Utah, because of our legislation, we can have residential programs that go up to age 18. And so a lot of kids from out of state come still to this day to Utah. Yep.
Yeah, so that was a job. I was called a house parent, and so I'd stay there I'd sleep there, and I worked 3 days in a row.
When I was in college, I was a residential treatment parent at age 22. I had a house, and they would have troubled kids come live with me. I mean, I think it all worked out fine, but what a bad idea is that? Like they were calling me a residential treatment parent, and I was still more concerned with my skateboard than I was with, what this kid was doing. I just would drop him off at his school every day and feed him, Eggo waffles in the morning. I don't know. It's crazy. But yeah, those are kind of funny jobs that we have when we're younger.
So you're working at the treatment center.
Yeah, and I'm also dating my husband at this time. So dating my husband at the treatment center. My parents are home from a mission. I'm still living at home, but I'm starting to live in the adult world. Still drinking, but I would call it controlled, whatever you want to call it. But
your parents, who are very active in the LDS Church, return missionaries now as parents, so they're really active. Were they aware that you drank? No. Okay. So what was that pressure like?
No, I was a closet drinker. I what happened at home was very different presentation than how I lived.
So was that a strange life to live, like this duality of like I'm one way one place and one way another?
Yeah, well, I just didn't want to hurt them or upset them, like that I had chosen a different path and that wasn't the same as theirs. So, yeah, I guess it was awkward, but I kept it very distant, like where I think that they probably didn't know, or if they did, they didn't say anything.
What about like your siblings or even your husband at the time?
Oh, my husband,
boyfriend?
yeah, because we would go out and drink together. Yeah,
okay, all right.
yeah. So, where was I going with this? Anyhow, yeah. So we drink together, and essentially, I ended up getting pregnant. So now we have a baby coming, and now it was really time to grow up. And in the typical culture, like you get married because that's just what you're supposed to do, is to have like a cohesive parenting for this new child that's coming into the world. So we ended up getting married. It was terrible to tell my parents that. I don't even know they know what to say. Like I didn't have like some spectacular $1 million wedding. I had very simple wedding. The people, like the neighborhood, came, but it wasn't like some extravaganza, like celebration, if you want to call it. It was a marriage, and then.
And your older siblings, so you were the youngest of how many?
I have 4 older brothers and an older sister.
Okay.
So
a lot went before you. Sometimes it's easier if one of the older ones messes up big time, but had they all kind of followed mom and dad's path pretty closely?
My oldest brother, he's not active in the church, so he took his own path. My other 2 brothers are my youngest brother, I would say. He's not super active, but they didn't have any major, like, obvious issues such as me. So my sister, she's pretty...
So you were the first one to come along to really challenge mom and dad a little bit.
I think my oldest brother challenged them, and I did.
Okay.
So you got married, and do you start living right, or do you keep drinking?
No, so I get married. I have my oldest daughter, best thing that ever happened to me. So that was the time to kind of clean up a little bit. So at that time, I was able to stop drinking. Like when I was pregnant, I didn't drink. When they were small, I would just be an occasional drink. It was more, just more social, more appropriate, I would call it. And then I got pregnant with my second daughter, and again, I was able to quit. Not a big deal. And at one point, I was like, I need to stop drinking. Like I had this feeling, like I need to stop doing this. My husband was out of town on a job in Cedar City. He works construction, and I stopped. Like, this is what I need to do. This is what I need to do. But he came back, and I didn't communicate that to him. And so we just continued to, like, occasionally drink, go out to dinner or whatever.
So he didn't know you had been having that feeling of needing to quit.
No, I never shared it with him. I was like, I really need to start, like.
You were getting scared.
I don't know if I was even getting scared. I just had, like, this feeling that something was going to go wrong, but I didn't act on that.
Premonition, huh?
Yeah, yeah. So, I was a pretty normal drinker. I had some friends that we would just go out on occasion, but I was mom now, so my kids took a huge. They became the priority, and I took good care of my kids. I was a good mom. My kids had everything that they needed. They were provided for, and probably to excess. We moved to Camas. About when my oldest daughter was 5. And that was kind of a game changer for me. I think that's when things started to get a little bit abnormal. So I moved out of my hometown where I had close family. They were just 10 minutes away, friends there. And I moved to Camas where I was a little bit alone. We live on a mountain up there.
And your kids are what age again?
My daughter started kindergarten. My youngest daughter started kindergarten there, and my oldest started first or second grade.
Okay.
Yeah.
And what was the reason because for the people that don't know, Ogden is a city, and then Camas is on the other side of the mountain, and it's pretty rural, especially probably, it's growing a little, but it's pretty rural, lots of farms, lots of space between houses. Was that the lure of moving out there?
Yeah. In Ogden, we had just this little backyard, and we wanted more land. We had this Alaska Malamute that needed a place to run, so we wouldn't get locked up all the time. So moved up there just for a new location, more property.
But definitely more isolation because you're used to being on top of each other in the city, and then now you move to the country where, it's a lot of space between houses.
There's a lot of space between houses, and we'll get to that.
And that's when you started to notice that things had changed a little bit.
Yeah, well, still I didn't notice that things had changed because I was in such denial. I was isolated. One of my friends moved from Ogden, so I had connection there. We just had a little neighborhood area of partiers.
At this point in your career, are you a registered nurse or are you still working for...
Oh, I forgot to tell you that.
Well, yeah.
I missed that part.
Yeah, it's okay.
Can you edit this?
No, just go back to it.
Okay.
You're fine.
Okay, so yeah, I have my 2 kids. I have this degree that's kind of doesn't pay very well. Don't really know what to do with it. It's a little bit of everything, but not super solid. Where I can go be a dietitian. I have nutrition background, but I can't be a dietitian. So I just was too broad of a degree. So I decided, well, I have all the prereqs for nursing. I never dreamed of being a nurse. I didn't I wasn't ingrained in my soul from a child. I kind of thought it was gross a little bit.
Well, let's be honest. A lot of nursing is pretty gross.
But it just made sense. And so I finally I had to apply. The first time I didn't get in. The second time I got in. So I went to nursing school at Weber State.
Which is a pretty tough program to get into. It's very competitive.
Very competitive. It was hard to get in, and I did it with 2 small children. And
That's
so,
impressive.
Yeah, it was it was really
an accomplishment.
A huge accomplishment. It was hard. There's a huge knowledge base that you have to learn in a very short amount of time. Yeah, so that's how I got into nursing. And I forgot another important detail.
Well, tell us. This is your story.
So after the birth of my second child, I was diagnosed with Graves' disease, which is an autoimmune disease that attacks your thyroid. So
really low energy.
High.
Oh, high
I'm
energy.
high.
So
yeah.
you're high. Okay.
Yeah. So I would be driving down the road, and my foot would just be pumping on the pedal, and I'm like, what is wrong? So I was diagnosed with that, and which causes extreme anxiety, off the charts anxiety. It affects every body system. Heart rate goes high, have a tremor, super nervous, super anxious. So I was diagnosed with that, but it kind of went away. So I don't know if I went into remission or not, or if alcohol suppresses the thyroid. So I don't know if there is a connection. I do think that there's a pretty strong connection between having Graves' disease with the extreme anxiety and drinking. So, okay, so back up to Camas. So we're living in
You're back on Party Mountain.
We're back on Party Mountain. Got the party friends. We threw a raging New Year's parties. It was fun. We're still having a pretty good time. It was becoming abnormal drinking at that point. But I wouldn't call myself an alcoholic at that point.
Well, abnormal in what? What do you mean by that?
It was becoming more excessive.
So it wasn't just social anymore.
Yeah. I would maybe disappear over, because I have a lot of space around my house. I would just go disappear behind a tree and drink a beer.
But see, that's how the disease works. At first, you're drinking on Friday or you're drinking on Saturday, and then everything's good. And then you're waiting for holidays like Cinco de Mayo, St. Patrick's Day.
Any holiday you can imagine.
But then it's and then you start to negotiate with yourself. You're like, well, I'm only going to drink, on Friday, or I'm only going to drink on Saturday. And then you go, well, but Thursday's like Little Friday, so maybe we can drink on Thursday.
Right.
And then you go, but Sunday is really fun day, and so we'll just drink on Sunday. And then Monday comes along, and I'm hungover, so I'm just going to drink a little on Monday to help me get through the day. And then next thing you know, you're just sober for Tuesday and Wednesday. And then, but that's the madness of the disease. And then you'll start to say things like, well, I'm not going to drink until at least it's 5 o'clock. You know what I mean? Right. And then 5 becomes 2.
And you're like, it's 5 o'clock somewhere.
Jimmy Buffett song.
Right.
But isn't it crazy how that creeps in and how your mind can justify and rationalize just about any way to drink?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And so when I think, and I only speak from my experience, when you say it became abnormal, it's those kind of things. It's like, well, I'm just going to go down and duck behind this tree, and I'm going to have a couple shots, then I'll come back, and I'll be fun mom, and everything will be cool, right?
Yeah, if I'll have the edge off, yeah. I'll just be happy.
Because I don't want to be mean. And then the stupid thing about this disease is that you will start to say, I'm doing this for you.
Yeah.
So you get a better me. You know what I mean? I don't really want to, but I would just sit here and sulk and be hungover, but you deserve a better me. And the only way I'm a better me is if I put a couple drinks in me.
Thanks, Casey. I appreciate it.
But does that sound familiar?
Oh, completely familiar. Yeah.
Crazy, right?
Yeah.
And just out of curiosity, had you gotten treatment for your Graves' disease yet, or was that still?
I'd get my levels checked on occasion if I was feeling off, but they would come back normal. Yeah. But I think it's because I was suppressing it with alcohol.
With alcohol, yeah.
But when the partying, in your own words, comes to be abnormal, did your husband or did any friends ever go, hey, you know what, you might want to think this through? My
husband would definitely say stuff. He hated me drinking because I'd get belligerent. I'd be mean. Usually I was mean, very insulting. A lot of F-bombs would fly when I was drunk. So he did not like me drinking. That's when cycles started happening. My husband didn't like me drinking, and he got very cold, and he'd be kind of mean. Mm-hmm. And so I would drink to cope with that, and then then I'd be drinking, and then he'd be like.
So you're both playing off each other in a negative way, right?
Yeah, it was very
kind of bad influence on each other that way.
Yeah, it was pretty hostile.
What was his drinking like? Just out of curiosity,
he's a normal drinker.
So he wasn't doing that.
He'll have an occasional beer with dinner, but he doesn't need to have the drink.
So he was able to stay just parties only, weekends only, that kind of stuff. Yeah. And then did he drink to excess? Was he somebody who got really drunk?
No. He would just he would drink on occasion. He'd drink to excess, but he doesn't have a problem with alcohol like I do.
And so you guys were feeding off each other.
Definitely feeding off each other. Life was getting a little difficult. That I got my first DUI in 2016, and that is when things really started going downhill. When you get your first DUI, you need to go have an assessment done. You need to maybe have some treatment. But so I'm a nurse, and I know how to talk about assessments. I do.
Sure.
I complete assessments, and so I didn't think I had a problem at that time, and so I passed my assessment. Move on my merry way. But
can I ask about the first DUI? Was it just sort of a normal situation? You got pulled over, had to walk the line. I mean, sometimes people are curious how a person gets identified as driving drunk.
I was coming up. So all my DUIs, by the way, are in the same spot. Mm-hmm. So I was driving. I think I was just driving around, blowing off steam, and I dropped my phone, and so I slowed down. And so the officer saw abnormal driving, and then he pulled me over, and I couldn't pass the test.
Okay. Was it a breathalyzer, walk the line?
The walk the line, I couldn't pass that, and then the breathalyzer, I can't remember what I blew. But
the first DUI, and I can speak on the behalf of DUIs. The first DUI, and the system is set up for a person who gets one. Like she said, it's pretty easy to convince yourself that this is a one-time thing. Most alcoholics would be thinking I can't believe I finally got caught. Mm-hmm. But if you know how to do the test and you do that, you lose your license for 3 months and you're back on the roads.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Right?
Yeah. Or in my situation, the officer didn't show up to the driver's license hearing, and so I'd never lost my license. And I was able to pass the therapy portion when I had my meeting with a counselor.
And I think that the folks in the medical professional you kind of know how to talk the talk a little bit, right?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
So you said that's when it started to get a little unraveled.
Yeah. So I have a DUI. And then the situation got pretty hostile at home. Still raising my kids, running them here and there, driving thousands of miles up and down the road in Camas to get to ball games, to get to their events. I'm a good mom, supportive. my life literally revolved around my kids while my marriage was unraveling. Excuse me. So at this point, I had a lot of shame. Like, that's embarrassing to get a DUI. I'm a nurse. Like, I'm all for advocate for health. Like, I teach people about, I teach them to better get their health under control and how to cure disease and so on and so forth. And it was embarrassing, and I was humiliated, and I carried a lot of shame. So I also, to go back to my nursing career, I've detoxed a lot of alcoholics, and that gave me like a perception of alcohol, like that I can compare to. Like, well, I'm not in the hospital detoxing. I'm not belligerent. I don't need lorazepam. I'm not seizing. Therefore, I don't have a problem. I had a lot of
because you saw that extreme.
I saw the extreme.
Like, nothing is quite more extreme when it comes to alcohol than seeing somebody detox. I'm sure.
Yeah.
Miserable.
Yeah.
Yeah. I saw he was detoxing, and he was throwing punches. He had to get restrained. He was so this one particular patient. I still remember his name. I don't remember a lot of patients' names, but I remember him. So, or I see people dying from liver failure because they drank them. They killed their liver from alcohol. I'm like, so my perception of alcohol is like, why can't you just stop? Like, why would one person do this to themselves? But I didn't understand that they couldn't at that time. Yeah. So I had this preconceived idea about alcoholics, and I wasn't one of them.
Yeah, but you were.
But I was.
Yeah, but isn't that interesting that you're a nurse, you're a medical professional with all that medical health training, you're working with people in lots of different ways, including detox, and yet you were as susceptible as anybody else to that stereotype that you could just stop. What's wrong with these people? Why can't they just be tougher about it? Isn't that interesting, right? Like, that's such a pervasive problem in our culture that even somebody in the medical, and I can say I know people in mental health that have the same, prejudiced ideas about things for whatever reason. And in your case, it might have been sort of self-serving, right? Because it was a defense mechanism to kind of, that's not me. So if I can sort of vilify this person, then I can't identify with them, and then if I don't identify with them, then I can't be considering myself an alcoholic or having a problem with alcohol. So there may have been some kind of unconscious mental, gymnastics going on there. But it's interesting that is, man, what a powerful issue that we have to deal with in our culture.
Most addicts will walk into the room, and I've sat in process groups with people and go, well, you don't understand. I'm different.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I'm not like you guys.
We are all the same.
I'm different. And that's why I went, well, but you were. But so you're walking around, you're driving your kids, you say you just feel a ton of shame. And I know that shame all too well. But that's not your only DUI.
Oh, no. Yeah. So then so we're having the marital problem cycle of me drinking, a lot of contention at home. And so at this point now, I deserve to drink because you're being mean. So I'm going to drive down that road where nobody can see me, and I'm going to drink. So that became very normal. My husband would call me, where are you at? Nowhere. What are you doing? Nothing. Like, over and over again. I was literally right down the road. Like, I live there's a lot of land, a lot of area, a lot of places for me to disappear to. So that became normal. And then at this point, he's telling me I have a drinking problem. I'm kind of recognizing that I have one, but now I don't know what to do with it because I have a position of trust as a nurse. I can't get sick because if I do, then I'm not trustworthy and I can't practice. And so I didn't know how to get help. I know all my resources. I know AA. I know
treatment centers.
FMLAs.
Yeah.
I can take FMLA, but I didn't know how to say I need to get help and take FMLA without shooting myself in the foot and
creating a big red flag.
Being identified as an alcoholic who is a risky person and a scary person. But the fact of the matter was I performed really well at my job. I was a great nurse. I was a great mom. But I was successful and I was doing a good job, but I was suffering
and
at this point.
that compensation, the ability to compensate, tricks ourselves into thinking, well, I'm okay because, and then in some unrelated area of life, oh, I'm killing it over here, so I can't have a problem over here. Well, that doesn't make any logical sense. It's just, self-delusion, but that's what happens in the process of addiction is we delude ourselves and we start to justify it. And it's like, well, I'm doing great at work. I'm doing great with the kids. So I don't know why I have a problem. And if I'm not doing great in the marriage, well, maybe that's your fault. Yeah. And I'm doing okay everywhere else. So yeah, I get that. And I think that's I bet you there's somebody listening right now that might go, oh, shoot, that sounds like me.
That was me.
Yeah.
I mean, down to the thing where I sat down with KSL and they said, hey, had you told us you had a problem, you'd still be working here. And
but it's scary to do that. Yeah, and that's what you were saying, right?
How do I come up and tell you that I'm broken and then not
And I'll be honest, the culture of that is better.
Yeah, no, it's changing.
But that's a post hoc analysis by KSL.
Oh, yeah.
I don't know what would have happened if you'd have gone in ahead of time. I'd like to trust them. I'd like to think that they would have.
I do trust them. I do think they would have.
Okay, but I want people to listen that it's like that. I empathize, especially in the medical field, that's a hard thing to do, to walk in and say, I'm having an addiction problem.
That's why I think it's so brave of Becky to come on this podcast. I've been reached out to emergency room doctors, airline pilots, truck drivers, all who have said, I don't know how to have this conversation and not threaten my livelihood.
Yep.
And to that I say, you're threatening your livelihood already.
Well, yeah, you're just,
and then that's where it goes back to the beginning of this podcast where you hope that this is going to go away.
Right. So I think that we have laws in place now that to some degree protect people. You can't fire someone for alcoholism and those kinds of things, having addictions. And most places, I think the culture's changing where most places do want to give you a chance and maybe help you, but I don't know. It's still I empathize with people that are in that position.
So you're drinking down at the end of the road. You're fighting with your husband. You're recognizing that you might have a problem with alcohol, but you're in a dilemma because you don't know what you can do without jeopardizing your job and your livelihood.
That is exactly what happened. I went and I talked to a church leader about hey, I'm having really trouble. There was a serious family conflict going on. And it was recommended that I go try this AA group. So I go to this AA Alcoholic Anonymous group. It was church sponsored. And I was very uncomfortable being there. And it wasn't, these people were great. It was ran by somebody that this was their calling. I don't know if they had a substance use disorder. So I felt like they didn't relate. And so I bailed on that because that just didn't work out, and I just didn't know what to do. I was at this point suffering. I was miserable. I was angry. Oh, I had rage that was just terrible. I was able to go to work. Oh, and I was cycling. Now I had my drink, my hangover day, where I could still work. I drink at night. Sorry, I drink at night. I'd have my hangover day. Where I would work, I'd go to work, and then on that third day, I couldn't wait to get home from work so that I could drink because now my brain isn't functioning correctly. It was becoming that I had to have that to function. And I noticed it, but I still didn't know what to do.
What were some of the symptoms you were struggling with? You said your brain wasn't functioning, but what symptoms did you notice?
Just I had a huge urge to drink. I was very anxious. And I was almost preoccupied with it. Yeah, I could go and take care of my patient. I was working home care. I could go take care of my patient, and I was safe to do that. I was very competent. But I always had that in the back of my mind, when is this day going to be over? I need to go drink.
As soon as you're not focused on a problem for the patient, then your brain drifts off to, when am I going to be able to drink? I wish I could drink, that kind of stuff. Were you struggling with physical symptoms at all, in the morning, feeling shaky or having a hard time staying asleep at night? Or
I would be up all night.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I definitely had trouble going to sleep. So I'd fall asleep at 2 a.m, so I was sleep deprived. But that's part of the alcohol withdrawal portion is that you don't sleep.
Right.
And so that would, so I would be tired, but I still was a little bit functional.
So you're trying some sort of rehabs. You tried the 12-step program that the church provides. You're going through that. Home life is a wreck. You're managing your job and your kids and everything, but you're looking forward to the days you can drink.
Yeah.
Where does it take a turn?
So it took the really drastic turn is when I think I had another argument with my husband, and I left the house to get away, and I was drinking, and I needed to just leave, and I needed more alcohol. And so I was driving to go to the gas station to get more alcohol. No, wait, I got to reverse. We're having a lot of problems, and I disappear, and I drive up into the mountains, and I'm drinking, and I made a wrong turn and took my car off of a cliff and hit a tree.
Yeah, that's a pretty big...
Whoa.
Yeah. So did I make a wrong turn to go off that cliff to hit a tree, or did I drive off to hit the tree? I'm pretty sure I drove off to hit the tree. Is my hindsight. I was drunk, but I was so desperate to have like some peace and some help that that was like my only solution is to like hopefully end my life. It didn't work out that way. The tree saved my life. I was in complete denial still that like I didn't know what to do. Do I have a problem? How am I going to get help? How am I going to get myself out of this ditch that I'm in where I feel like I'm getting
literal and
dirt
figurative.
shoveled on top of me, and I'm trying to crawl out, and the dirt keeps on falling on me, and I didn't know how to get out at that point. And so it was probably just to like disappear, be gone. So I got my car pulled out. It was totaled. I bought a new car. Still carrying on, working as if like nothing ever happened. Just like, oops, there was an accident there.
So your cry for help went unanswered.
Yeah, it was just, yeah. I don't know if it was unanswered or if I didn't express it correctly. It was just like, oh, Becky, don't drink and drive off a cliff. like duh. Like, yeah.
And it sounds like there was a certain amount of, repression of having insight about, wow, that was desperate. Wow, that was reckless. I was feeling suicidal, and I need some help. It's once you sobered up, it sounds like you sort of shoved that back down. Yeah. I knew I was a train wreck, but I just didn't know what to do. It was just terrible. So I buy a new car. It's not registered, and I get in an argument with my husband. I get in my unregistered car because it was bought from a dealership where I had to have the police look at the car and run a background on the car to make sure it wasn't stolen. So I went to go get the title and get it registered, and they told me that. So I'm driving down the road with my unregistered car and have my brights on at the a stoplight or a stop sign. Go through the stop sign, and a cop car flips around, and he turns on his lights, and I'm like, what on earth? Like, I haven't even done anything. I didn't know I was drunk. Like, at this point, I have such a high tolerance that, I didn't feel drunk. I didn't know I was drunk. Apparently, I was. So it took me a while to pull over, which was a sign that I'm intoxicated and trying to hide something, when in reality, I just didn't want to get pulled over in front of somebody's house. Okay. Yeah.
So that was a sign of that. And then I don't know if he pulled my background and that I have a history of DUI, and I have my dog in the car. My dog's barking, about ready to eat the officer. And anyhow, gets me out of the car. I can't pass the test. He says I have nystagmus. My eyes are shaking. And this is where kind of like I question this pullover. I'm not denying that like I had drank, but I still question it a little bit. But regardless, there's my second DUI. At that point, there's an option. I'm going to treatment. So, and I have to leave my house. So I leave my house and move up in with my sister, and I'm sleeping on her couch in the basement. So I'm kind of couch hopping and like don't know what's going to happen at home. Oh, I got fired, obviously. The second after I got done with I got out of jail, got home, I called my coworker and I said, hey, I just got a DUI. Like, I don't know what to do. Like, I haven't been convicted of anything. Anyhow, she's like, I think that you need to report it. So I reported it. They went through corporate headquarters, and they're like, no, she's got to go because I had a potential DUI. So I lost my job. This was in December, right around Christmas.
Of course. Yeah. That's when that happens.
So I lost my job, and I moved in with my sister, and it was really good to me. And I'm going to treatment, and I'm struggling in treatment. Like I want to get better, and I wanted it now. And I would relapse, and I would beat the crap out of myself, like for relapse. Like,
and this is like an IOP.
Mm-hmm. It's an IOP, yeah. So I'm going to that 5 nights a week. Met some great people in this IOP, people that struggle, some that have recovered and are still there just for support, and some people that are really struggling. And I'm still in denial, believe it or not. Like, I can't believe that this is happening. Like, do I really need this IOP? I'm like, oh, yes, I needed that IOP. What I really needed was to go to inpatient. Because while I was in the IOP, I still had, like, a lot of distractions. I couldn't focus on myself. I had my husband that I was like, you probably should get a job. And my kids are old. They're adults now. So I'm a brand new empty nester. And I've lost my job. Like, I had all these, like, money pressure. Like, I didn't know what to do. So I couldn't focus on my recovery, or I didn't want to. I'm not sure. I wanted to. No, I wanted to get better. So I'm in the IOP. I'm relapsing. I ended up having to have my keys and my purse taken away, so I couldn't walk to the gas station. I'm a beer drinker, by the way. Mm-hmm. So I don't like hard alcohol, based on probably my first experience with drinking.
Mine was Bud Light.
Yeah, I went from Coors Light, Bud Light, to Natty Light, to PBRs. You know, like,
you don't get a blue ribbon for coming in second.
Yeah. So like my drug of choice was at every gas station and every grocery store. So it was always in my face.
Oh, you and Casey relate to that.
Yeah. So
they take your keys and your purse away.
Yeah.
So you can't walk to the gas station.
So I can't walk to the gas station to go buy any alcohol, because I'd go buy a tall one or something. I'd just like go on a walk. You know?
Yeah. Go get a 24-ouncer.
Yeah. And just because I'm anxious, because I'm detoxing. I'm anxious. I'm not sleeping. I don't think I had a good night's sleep probably for that, from January till March, we'll say. Mm-hmm. Didn't have any. I was detoxing. Like, I wasn't seizing. I didn't need medical detox, but I was struggling. And then at that time, I think my Graves' disease started popping up. So my detox, like, my anxiety was through the roof. A lot of outside issues going on, and I couldn't focus on myself, because I had zero self-worth at this point. Yeah. Like, I was embarrassed. I was ashamed. I was devastated. I was threatened. So as a nurse, I have a nursing license, which is managed by Doppel. And so I have Doppel calling me saying, what's going on? You can't be practicing. So I think I'm going to lose my nursing license. I'm terrified. I have to go face my second DUI charge in court, and then COVID hit. And so then we go into a lockdown, and there's not, like, resources. Like, I know there's AA meetings, but I couldn't go to the AA meetings because they're not in person now. I didn't know how to get a hold of anybody. I didn't know how to treat my disease, right, which is shocking, because that's what I know. Yeah. But my brain was so off at that point that I couldn't make decisions, and I couldn't find resources that would help me, because I couldn't think.
Well, and to be fair, I mean, that all is true, of course, part of the disease. But to be fair, when COVID hit, it turned the medical community upside down in trying to figure out, like, how do we still work with people? And, you know, for a period of time, I would say at least 6 months, programs that had all traditionally been in person were no longer available. And it took a while for the recovery community and mental health and a lot of things to start to utilize those things. So I'm sure that was an added issue beyond the disease that you were dealing with.
Yeah, I was struggling for sure. And then COVID hit, and I decided to go home. Like, well, I can't just stay here, sitting here. I need to at least go home and work on my house, because my house is in a disastrous remodel. So I went home, and the second I left, past Morgan, and
we're a bad influence on people.
I relapsed.
Morgan.
You relapsed.
I relapsed, and I didn't know what to do, because I'm heading home. My husband's gonna be pissed off at me. He's like, "You're in treatment." I'm like, "What are you doing?" Like I was, and I went and I hopped on my IOP meeting, because it went to Zoom, and like, I'm relapsing while I'm in the Zoom IOP meeting, and they called me, and they're like, my sister called me, My therapist called me, and nobody could walk me off that cliff. Like, it was like it was like where your serotonin comes back, and you take that drink, and it hit me like freaking a ton of bricks. And I got drunk really fast, and I like pulled over. I'm like, there's something wrong. Something is wrong. So I pull over. At least I have the common sense to pull over. So I pull over, and I'm like, either I'm going to go to jail or I'm going to die because I'm not safe. And so I sat there, and my sister and my brother-in-law pulled up. They're like knocking on my door. They came from Ogden to find me. Like, I wasn't answering my phone. And my brother-in-law knocks on my door, and they're ready to take me, and I would have gone to inpatient at that point if I could get in with COVID.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
But a police officer pulled up at the same time. So this is literally 3 months after my second DUI, and I got arrested again for my third. Part of this, so I have Doppel on my butt. I am detoxing. I'm failing because I wanted it now. I wanted to be sober because I'm not patient.
Yeah. Microwave society. Give it to me now. Give me hot. Get it ready. Let's do it.
Yep. Like, I stopped drinking. Now I'm sober. Like, why is this so hard? Like, it was such a huge battle. Like, it was terrible. And then COVID hit. And I lost my court date. I was losing jobs. I was applying for jobs. I got offered a job, and I couldn't get a job because I had pending charges. I couldn't get out of court because the court system was shut down.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it was
a perfect storm.
Yeah, that was a very awful time of my life. It was an awful 2 years while I was stuck in the court system. I couldn't get out. I was trying to recover. Then COVID's happening, and you're seeing people die in New York City and New Jersey, and it's all over the news.
And they're looking for nurses.
And I can't find a job because I can't pass a background check, and I have pending charges, but they waive background checks. So,
because they needed nurses, and they needed them now.
Yep.
Yeah.
So I flew off, and I worked in New Jersey. I worked directly across from Manhattan. You could see Manhattan from the Hudson. So I was living in a hotel in New York City, taking the bus. I was working COVID shifts. It was something that was unbelievably hard.
Are you still drinking at the time?
I'm going to my IOP meetings at night. I'm working the night shift, by the way. I'm going to my IOP meetings at night, but I'm drinking. I would walk over to the little gas station because I love my gas stations and buy beer and then drink. And then that's another part of my problem. That was I got to step back a little bit, but my transition from being a normal drinker to things are getting pretty sketchy is I would work the night shift. I worked the night shift for years, and I'd have to crank up on caffeine to stay awake so I could take care of patients. And then I'd have to drive home and couldn't fall asleep driving home, so I'd still be a little bit wound up. I had a busy night, patients gave me anxiety, and I'd have to drink to go to sleep.
Yeah. So the upper and the downer.
Yeah. So I drink a beer to get me to sleep because I had to get up the next night, drive to work, take care of people, not kill anyone because I'm tired. And that is definitely the tipping point, was working the night shift.
Yeah, and the night shift, man, that will mess up your cognitive abilities because it's just not our normal circadian rhythm. And so even when people get 8 or 9 hours of sleep, but it's during the day and they're up all night, it creates a lot of sleep disorders. And so a lot of people find themselves in that trap that you're describing of taking something to get up and then taking something to go down.
I was in it. So you're in New Jersey, across the bay from Manhattan, and just trying to maintain, doing what you can.
I'm trying to maintain.
A pretty chaotic situation.
It was a very chaotic
though,
situation. It was horrifying. It was heartbreaking. There's a lot of codes. There was never seen people that sick in my life. I've been a nurse for 20 years. These people were sick, and there wasn't enough people, and so.
And a lot of codes for people that aren't nurses. What does that mean?
A lot of codes. Oh, like people dying, like a code blue. Like this person is going, and we need to get in there, now, and get them on a ventilator.
So it was serious, and it was chaotic, and it was unprecedented.
Yeah.
So that's a lot of stress for a person who's trying not to drink.
And while you're over there, are the charges still pending?
The charges are still pending because the court system didn't open up again until I want to say August.
Yeah,
it went from March to
summer.
August.
Yeah,
it was gone all summer. So I had these pending charges. Yeah, I wasn't there for very long, but it was long enough. And I hope, like, I was the perfect person to go there because I'm a nurse. I can help, and I don't care if I die. So, like, I wasn't scared of COVID because it didn't matter. If I got it, then
You're feeling self-destructive.
yeah, then I can, like, disappear from Utah. I don't have to deal with my charges, and I can just go. I also wanted to.
Life had a different plan for you.
I also wanted to run away, so that was a good place to run away. And it, although it was chaotic, and although I was still drinking and going to my IOP, that was a game-changing moment for me because then I could be on my own, and I learned that I can be on my own. I don't have to have all of these, like, extrinsic factors that give me self-worth, like my husband, like my kids. Because I'm an empty nester. Like, my kids love me, but they don't need me.
Doing their own thing, yeah.
Yeah, they don't need me anymore. I still had my job. I was still able to work, I should say. I was still able to help people. And then I came home, and the story continues.
Come home to a couple charges.
Came home to a couple charges, and I was pretty obstinate about it. I wanted to fight them, and had I fought them, I'd probably be in prison right now. So I took a plea deal with the charges. I had one heck of a lawyers are not created equal. I learned that. One of them got fired. I hired another one and took a pretty decent plea deal. The plea deal was 10 days in jail, and I'm not charged with a felony right now because if I had a felony, I wouldn't be able to work. So I took a plea deal for reduced charges and drug court. So I'm in drug court for DUIs. I don't have I don't do drugs. But probably half the people in drug court are there for felony DUI, and the other half are there for like crimes committed while under the influence.
But as of today, you are over a year and a half sober.
I'm over a year and a half sober, and I stared with the devil, like literally, and I am sober and I won. But that's just the horror of this disease I firmly believe it's a disease. I have no reason. I don't have trauma, like maybe little bits of trauma, but I'm not your classic person. Like, I have no reason to be an alcoholic is what I'm trying to say. And I am. And I think that's what I want to share with people is that the stigma is real. Like, I had to fight hard to go back to work because people thought that I was unsafe, that I would hurt somebody, that I lost a lot of jobs. I applied. I went to a lot of job interviews, and I got rejected a lot. And then I interviewed, and I found, like, I have an excellent manager and an excellent coworker that my life is not based on my addiction. They know that. I'm a very good person that got caught up in something that I could not control. And I regret my feelings that I had towards other. Like, I didn't hate people. Like, I understood. Like, I was compassionate, but I didn't understand. And I think that this journey has been insane, but I wouldn't. Like, you can brand me with the scarlet letter now because I can carry that with no regret. And I feel like I have an opportunity to help other people that are scared of having that brand of an addict because it's silly, it's wrong, and there's a lot of education that needs to take place to change this stigma of, like, that people are, like, worthless and that they aren't safe and that I'm going to steal pills or, because this is what people think, or that I have a hangover or...
So how did you get sober? I mean, because you said you came back from New Jersey and you got put into drug court. Mm-hmm. Is drug court what helped you get sober, or?
How I got sober is, I pled guilty to my second DUI, and with that I got a probation officer and a breathalyzer.
In your car?
That I'm blowing 3 times a day. A handheld breathalyzer, a sober link, whatever you want to call it. That's what got me sober. Is that if I blew dirty, or if I showed alcohol, if I registered, there's a word, I would be going to jail. And so at that point, I didn't want to go to jail because I was like...
You already spent 10 days there.
I was like regaining my life again and like starting to feel good. But yeah, the breathalyzer is what got me sober. And I wish it would have been AA. I wish that I would have been able to listen. I wish I would have been able to calm down, but that wasn't what worked for me. I had to have a probation officer and law enforcement, and that got me sober. I don't need that anymore. I think that the first 3 months is pretty hard. And then after that, I lost my craving, and I was starting to clear and be able to see things as they are instead of these concocted, like, crazy things that, like, I thought was happening, because alcohol messes with your emotions. It messes with your perceptions of things. It messes with
reality.
And your reality is, like, that's not normal to go down the road and drink, but that was normal to me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So does drug court help you stay sober?
In drug court, I don't care. Like, this is no secret, but I don't care for the court portion of it. Like, I meet with a judge, and for the first, 6 months of it, probably 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. For the first 9 months of it, I'd see a judge every week. I didn't like that. It felt like very punitive, and I didn't like that part about it. But I still don't. But I have met the most amazing people, and that's another thing, is that I've met really cool people that suffer. They're not. They have criminal charges, but they're not criminals. They are beautiful people, and I'm so grateful to have met them and to, like, share this journey that's been really hard. Yeah.
Can I ask about your husband?
Oh, I have a great marriage.
Oh, see, I love that.
Yeah,
Nice.
you eliminate the alcohol, and it's just amazing what happens. Like, yeah, we have a great marriage. My husband loves me, and he always did, but he didn't want anything to do with that.
And can you blame him?
It sounds like you were a little unpleasant when you were drinking.
It was both. It took two to tango on this one.
Right.
Yeah,
It always does.
And I think that's, we talk about alcohol or addiction as being a family disease. It affects everybody. It brings out the worst in all of us. So I'm sure it brought out the worst in him. It brought out the worst in you. And that's not sustainable. But I'm so glad to hear that you guys are doing well.
So, Dr. Matt, I love it. And you're currently working as a registered nurse. You've found people who love you and appreciate you and value your service. And, you say that's not like a typical story. That's a pretty...
I think that there's a lot of detail there.
Yeah.
There's a little bit more to it, though. I forgot to tell you. So, with my nursing license, I'm followed by UPHP. It's Utah Professional Health Program. So I am drug tested. Like, I pee in a cup. There's no doubt that I am clean and sober when I go to work. They have ample evidence of that. There's treatment requirements. So my nursing license just wasn't like, oh, okay, here you go, Becky.
No, I know.
Go back to work. Like, so not only do I have drug court, but I also have UPHP. I got a double whammy here. Yeah. So and that's what comes with when you have a position. Such as being a nurse or a doctor. That's what the program's designed for: nurses, doctors, dentists, physical therapists.
But it's an important thing, and you put yourself in that situation, so you'll do what you need to continue to work.
Well, and I think it's even a little more than that. And I don't, want to put words in your mouth, but when you have a helping profession, when you're somebody like you mentioned, any of those healthcare types of people, it becomes part of who you are. It becomes part of your self-perception and how you think about who you are. It literally is, I'm someone who helps somebody else. And when a part of who you are is threatened to be taken away, it's awesome to see people dig in and fight and be willing to have all that extra oversight and the hassle of peeing in the cup and doing all these things, because you're like, I don't want to give up part of who I am. I'm going to fight for it. Yeah,
for sure. Yeah, this isn't about the money. Like, nurses don't get paid that well. This is definitely, it has become part of my identity. And when that was taken from me for that amount of time, I probably lost about a year. That was really hard, and that really affected my sobriety. Like, that's when it was white knuckling, like, fight. That's when I was fighting for my life.
And that's why it's so great that there are certain programs out there. Casey had a program that helped him, drive so that he could work and do those things. And we have this healthcare oversight program that helps people see, the program is there if you'll take advantage of it to be your best self and allow you to continue to flourish. Because when your identity is taken away, you can see how easily a person just can fall back into their addiction. So I think those sorts of programs are really beneficial if people will take advantage of them.
For sure.
Well, from one guy who peed in a cup to another lady who peed in a cup, I'm proud of you. You know what I mean? Because, I mean, but, and I'm going to tell you that. I mean, I joke about that, but that is not a fun experience. And you know what I mean?
No, it's humiliating.
It's humiliating, you know, and you go there and there's got to be a guy in the room.
Well,
and
your power and control over your life's taken away. But you lost it. So,
you have to go, this is what I need to do to get my life back, then this is what I'm going to do. And I think that's very apropos of what recovery is about. You need to do what you need to do to get your life back. And you just have to do the work. It's not something that you can just hope goes away.
Right.
You can hope for a better life, and I can tell you this, there is a better life at the end of it.
Yep.
But you've got to do the work. Nobody can do it for you.
You're going to create it.
So thank you very much for stopping by and sharing your story. It is absolutely amazing, and it will help someone out there. It'll help multiple.
I hope so. Especially the medical community. And COVID's been very hard on that community, and I know how people cope.
Well, I get emails.
Right.
I get emails from first responders all the time, from firefighters to EMTs to emergency room doctors who love the show and would love to come on, but are afraid of the repercussions.
Hesitant.
If they shared their story. So I'm glad you were brave enough to stand up and do it.
Hopefully, I don't have repercussions. I don't see any
No.
This is just a part of my life.
You're
a very small story that I have that was very scary and terrifying, to say the least. But it doesn't define me. I'm far bigger than this.
Well, you're awesome. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And Project Recovery is brought to you by our friends at knowyourscript.org. And in case you forgot, Project Recovery is what?
You know, it's a KSL podcast, Casey.
Biggity, biggity, oh.
The contents of this program are for informational purposes only. The program is not intended to be a substitute for professional medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. Always seek the advice of your physician, licensed therapist, or other qualified health provider with any questions you may have regarding a medical condition. Never disregard professional medical advice or delay in seeking it because of something you've heard on this program. KSL does not recommend or endorse any specific tests, physicians, products, procedures, opinions, or other information that may be mentioned on the program. Reliance on any information provided on the program is solely at your own risk.